You could feel it right away. This wasn't just another divisional game. It felt like the Cowboys needed a statement, and they gave one. The rivalry with Washington always brings an edge, but today the Cowboys came to a T&T Stadium and imposed themselves from the first whistle, building a lead and never letting the Commanders get comfortable. By the final whistle, the scoreboard told the story, a convincing win that swung momentum back to Dallas and forced Washington to answer a lot of uncomfortable questions. The Cowboys piled up points with explosive plays, and the defense produced the kind of turnover that's impossible to ignore. Let's set the scene quickly so you know why this mattered. Both teams were looking to gain ground in the NFC East, and for Dallas this was an opportunity to shake off recent frustration and show they're still a team to be reckoned with in the division. That urgency changed how the Cowboys approached the game, more aggressive play calls in key moments, tighter execution on explosive plays, and an emphasis on finishing drives. From a narrative perspective, that's the number one takeaway. This was a bounce-back performance at a time when momentum matters more than ever. If you think this was a turning point for Dallas, type yes in the comments. If not, type no. And while you're down there, help us reach our goal of 16,000 subscribers by hitting subscribe. It really helps the channel keep making these breakdowns. You could sense early that this was going to be an offensive showcase. The Cowboys' offense didn't just execute, they dictated the game. Dak Prescott looked calm, confident, and completely in control, scanning the field, reading coverages, and delivering strikes with rhythm. Every time Washington tried to adjust, Dallas had an answer. That's when you know the system is clicking, when the defense reacts and you're already one move ahead. The first drive set the tone, crisp timing, strong protection, and the receivers getting immediate separation. You could see how the play design opened space for CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson. Dak's accuracy on intermediate routes was outstanding, hitting Ferguson in stride over the middle and keeping the chains moving. What really stood out was how efficient Dallas was on third down. That's been an issue in the past, but on this day, they looked polished and purposeful. When Dak hit Lamb on that deep post for the long touchdown, it wasn't a fluke, it was the culmination of several plays where Dallas had baited Washington into creeping the safeties closer to the line. Once they did, it was game over. The offensive line deserves a ton of credit too. They neutralized Washington's front, giving Dak time to work through his reads and opening lanes for the run game. Tony Pollard and Rico Dowdle combined for balanced runs that kept the Commanders guessing. Pollard, in particular, looked like his burst was back. He was decisive, hitting the hole and dangerous once he reached the second level. When your run game forces linebackers to hesitate, play action becomes lethal, and that's exactly what we saw. The Commanders' defense started second-guessing every snap, unsure whether they were about to get gashed by a run or burn deep again. Jake Ferguson's chemistry with Dak is becoming a real weapon. On key downs, Dak trusted him to find the soft spot in coverage, and Ferguson delivered. That red zone touchdown where he boxed out the defender and hauled it in over the middle, that's what you want from your tight end: reliable, physical, and smart. The tight end play has quietly become one of the most consistent parts of this offense, and it's paying dividends. Mike McCarthy's play calling also deserves a nod. The tempo changes kept Washington off balance. One drive would grind the clock. The next would be quick strike passes and up-tempo snaps. It forced the Commanders' defense into constant substitutions, and you could see the fatigue set in by the second quarter. Once Dallas took control of the pace, the rest of the game became about managing the lead, but they never lost their edge. That's important because in previous weeks this team had been criticized for easing off once ahead. Not this time. They stayed aggressive, played to their strengths, and kept putting points on the board. As explosive as the offense looked, the defense might have been even more impressive. This was vintage Cowboys football: relentless pressure, tight coverage, and big plays that flipped momentum in an instant. You could tell from the opening series that Dan Quinn's unit came to send a message. They were flying around, communicating well and never letting Washington's offense breathe. Every time the Commanders thought they had a spark, the Cowboys' defense snuffed it out immediately. It started with the pass rush. Micah Parsons and Demarcus Lawrence were disruptive from the jump, collapsing the pocket and forcing Washington's quarterbacks into rush decisions. Parsons didn't just pressure the passer. He drew constant double teams that freed up everyone else. That's what makes him such a nightmare. Even when he's not getting sacks, he's dictating what the offense can and can't do. And on this day, the Commanders couldn't do much of anything. Once Dallas started mixing in stunts and delayed blitzes, Washington's offensive line had no answers. The result: sacks, hurried throws, and a passing game that never got comfortable. Then came the turnovers, the plays that completely broke Washington's confidence. Darren Bland continued his incredible season with another interception return for a touchdown, and that play completely deflated the Commanders while electrifying the crowd. Those are the moments that define not just games, but entire stretches of a season. When your defense is scoring points, you're playing at a different level. Bland's pick six wasn't a fluke. It came from disciplined film study and perfect positioning. He recognized the route combination, jumped it at just the right time, and finished with authority. That play alone symbolizes what Dallas has built defensively: instinct, preparation, and confidence. Add inconsistent contributions from vets who locked down their assignments and young defenders who made key tackles, and the secondary looked cohesive and confident. And we can't overlook the run defense. After being questioned earlier in the season for giving up too many yards on the ground, the Cowboys tightened up in this matchup. Linebackers were disciplined in their gaps, the tackles clogged the middle, and every run seemed to end with 2 or 3 blue jerseys around the ball. That kind of collective effort sends a message to the rest of the league: this defense can stop the pass and the run. While the Stars drew all the headlines, this win was also built on the kind of depth and complementary football that great teams rely on. You could see it in every phase: offense, defense, and special teams, guys stepping up in key moments, filling roles, and executing at a high level. That's something championship teams do, and it's exactly what Dallas displayed in this blowout over Washington. Even beyond the starters, you saw rotation players holding their own, especially when Washington tried to dial up pressure with disguised blitzes. The Cowboys' protection schemes held strong, and that gave Doc the comfort to operate cleanly all game. Tyler Smith and Terrence Steele deserve credit for keeping the edges clean, while the interior linemen consistently created running lanes for Pollard and Dowdle. Offensive line play rarely gets the spotlight, but games like this remind you how much stability up front determines everything else. The receivers beyond CeeDee Lamb also made meaningful contributions. Brandon Cooks had another solid showing, keeping drives alive with sharp route running and reliable hands. Cooks' speed stretches defenses even when he's not targeted, and that's the kind of veteran presence that opens opportunities for everyone else. Kavonte Turpin flashed in the return game too. His burst and vision constantly put Dallas in favorable field position, and that's an underrated advantage. Field position changes how a team calls plays, and Turpin gave the Cowboys the edge all afternoon. Special teams continued to be a stabilizing force as well. The kicker remained automatic, giving the coaching staff freedom to make aggressive decisions without fearing missed opportunities. Depth on defense mattered late in the game when younger players got extended snaps and delivered. Those late-game reps might not grab headlines, but they build confidence and depth for when the games really matter. Dallas now looks like a team with impact players up and down the roster, not just stars, but role players who execute at a championship level. When you take a step back, this wasn't just a win, it was a statement. The Cowboys didn't just beat Washington, they dismantled them in every phase. The offense looked dynamic, the defense looked suffocating, and the special teams remained reliable. Performances like this remind everyone, fans, media, and opponents, that Dallas is still a force to be reckoned with when everything clicks. What stood out the most was the focus. No playing down to the opponent, no sloppy sequences, just 4 quarters of professional, high-energy football. This kind of game matters not only in the standings but in the locker room. You can feel momentum shift when a team executes this cleanly. Confidence builds, chemistry tightens, and players start trusting that everyone around them will do their job. That's how you create consistency, something the Cowboys have been chasing all season. If they can bottle this formula, they'll be a nightmare matchup down the stretch. So tell me, do you think this was Dallas's most complete performance of the season? Drop your answer in the comments, yes or no, and tell me why. If you enjoyed this breakdown and you want more film room detail on any of the big plays, whether you want a play-by-play on CeeDee Lamb's long score, a red zone breakdown of Jake Ferguson's grab, or a defensive deep dive on that turnover, let me know which play in the comments and smash the like button so I know to make that video next. And don't forget to subscribe to help push the channel to 16,000 subscribers. Your support keeps these weekly Cowboys breakdowns going.